Hey, thanks for coming to my channel. Brad Wardle, call sign Captain Wingnut, from Cougar Ridge Ranch high in the Uinta Mountains of eastern Utah. This video is part 2 in my 5-part series on killing, crawling, flying, biting insects. Now that you're familiar with the killers, let's put them into action. If you haven't already watched the 5 killers video, you'll want to watch that. It'll tell you about my 5 favorite insect killers, and they'll probably become your 5 favorites as well. You'll also want to watch the other videos in this series to understand all of the 5 killers. Alright, let's go put these first killers into action. Before we get started, please understand that this is what I do. I'm letting you be a fly on the wall and watch and learn from somebody who's been around the park a few times. But everything in life requires that you take a personal initiative and use common sense in all that you do. So if you don't like what I do, that's no problem. Nobody's gluing your eyes to the screen. Just click away. If you do continue to watch, please use your common sense and figure out a way that it'll work for you. Just don't do it if it's against your personal views or ethics. Think before you act. You don't need to lecture me and the other flies on the wall here on why you personally think it's wrong. We don't care. Please keep that to yourself and we'll all have a wonderful time. Right now I'm going to show you what I do to kill a couple of real specific crawling insect pests, cockroaches and ants. I'll cover the rest of the crawly things in just a moment. If your concern is cockroaches, just sprinkle pure boric acid down where they travel looking for food, which is usually your kitchen. You don't need to scent it or do anything with it. You just put it down where they can track through it. Sprinkle it under the kitchen sink. Sprinkle it where you keep your garbage. Sometimes that's under the sink, sometimes that's in a closet or a compactor or other place. Roaches will track through it and it'll get on their hair and their feet and their bodies. They're social insects, so they feed each other and they groom each other. So when they return home to the colony, it'll be cleaned off and everyone gets a taste. Now, boric acid remains in the food chain because it doesn't degrade. And since cockroaches are cannibals, they eat the roaches that died from the boric acid and get the same boric acid and die themselves. They've traveled a little distance. They've gone maybe to another nest. This makes it a seriously long-lasting roach killer. This is why people tell me in the comments that they put boric acid down in their apartment and in a couple of weeks the whole apartment building didn't have roaches. That's why. Now, ants. You can make liquid killer. I covered that in another video. Or you can make a dry boric acid ant killer. The instructions are in the description. I just mix a cup of powdered sugar with a teaspoon of boric acid and put it where the ants travel. They eat it, take it back to the colony, feed everyone else, and they all eventually die. Now, you can use a 1/4 teaspoon to a 1/4 cup. I stick with no more than a tablespoon of boric acid per cup. At a tablespoon, it might be too strong. They might sense it and might not take it. A teaspoon, they always take it. A little air in the bag. And I just shake up the bag. Then you can put this under your cupboards, under your counters. You can put this in closets. If you're going to put it in closets and places like that, I would put it in maybe take a paper cup and cut it off so it's just a little short little container. But the ants will come for this. And they want the sugar. They won't be able to taste the boric acid in it. And in 5 to 15 days, you'll start to see fewer and fewer ants coming. You may have to fill the little container a few times because sometimes they're voracious and they want a lot of it. But Pretty quickly you'll start to notice there are fewer and fewer ants until there are no ants, and that's when the colony is sick, dead, and or dying. So there you have it. That's how I mix it up for ants. So it's a phenomenal killer. It can take up to 15 days to wipe out an ant colony. Now, cornmeal is another ant killer. It's probably the safest ant killer available because it's corn. It's totally safe around children and pets. It kills ants because they see it as a food source. It has a taste. It has a smell. The problem is they can't digest it, but they take it home, and when they exhaust their digestible food sources that they've stored, they'll basically starve to death eating cornmeal. But there are drawbacks to cornmeal. So consider these few things. One, it takes a very long time to kill an ant colony. First, they got to take it to the colony and replace their current food sources with it. As long as they have other viable foods, as long as they're out foraging, this will not work. It usually takes effect in the winter when they're dormant beneath the soil and they've eaten all of their reserves, and then they get to the cornmeal. And two, cornmeal is a food source. So it feeds everything else, including rodents and cockroaches. So use this only for ants where you don't care about feeding anything and everything else. Lastly, there's diatomaceous earth. Now this is a strange chemical, or it's really not a chemical. It's a crystalline rock that comes from sedimentary formations. It consists of fossilized remains of diatoms, which are a type of shelled protist. It's a mechanical insecticide versus a poison. It kills insects by cutting their exoskeletons, causing them to dehydrate and die. It usually cuts in their joints that are the movable parts. It cuts those, lets the moisture out. They don't have to eat it, they only have to touch it, and they'll die. It sticks to their bodies, and the sharp crystals cut through any insect exoskeleton. They know what it is. They can see it. If you were in their place, it would look like you were crossing a desert of razor-sharp crystals that would have zero mercy on you if you walked into them. For mammals, reptiles, birds, it's not safe to breathe on a regular basis. But it's just like powder for mammals, humans. It's used as a filtration in many industries, including swimming pool filters. It's a mild abrasive, and it's used in metal polishes and even toothpaste. It's also used as an absorbent in liquids used in coatings. It's in filters in plastics and rubber, cat litter, and it's a stability component of dynamite. It is used in soil for potted plants and permanent decorative trees like little bonsais. Okay, in the end, boric acid is much more efficient and much faster at killing an ant colony over cornmeal and diatomaceous earth. Well, that's it for part 2. Just dva for those of you in Moscow, parte dos for those of you in Spain. We've now covered 3 of the 5 of my favorite killers. Parts 3, 4, and 5 will cover my ultimate favorite insect killers, and I'll show you how we use them to make our lives more peaceful. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and it's time to watch the next video in this series, Part 3, Killing Crawling Pests, where I'm going to show you how I kill crawly pests with permethrin and pyrethrins.